Ichimon Japan is made possible in part by the kindness of people like Kelly. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining the Patreon over at japankyo.com/Patreon. Kelly joined at the $3 a month plus alpha tier. If you want access to the perks that come with that, then you got to go over and sign up. Again, japankyo.com/Patreon. And by the way, if you want to pick up a t-shirt, I have several designs over at kimitodesigns.com. That's KIMITO designs.com. It very well could be, but I don't know about that one. I didn't research it. So
a battalion of drunk street urchins makes a lot more sense than vegetarian street urchins.
Vegetarian street urchins.
Vegetarian street urchins. It's like, give us your food, but make sure it's vegetables. Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony and
I'm Ryan.
And today, once again, we are joined by one of the hosts of the Tokyo Explosion podcast, which I highly recommend, Kyle Broyles.
Shimo, everybody. I just finished my asashan because I don't want to be an obatarian. That would be cho beriba.
Ooh, nice. All right, so...
I keep it nowy over here.
Jeez. And that's exactly why I had you on. All right. So we will be digging into all that stuff. But today's going to be a fun one. I love digging into this kind of stuff. So let's get into it. So Ichimon means one question. And every episode we ask a question about Japan. A lot of times they're not particularly helpful questions, but they are fun questions. So today's question is, what should I know about Japan's bubble era? All right. So the bubble. It's a very famous era in Japanese. Often it's called babburu jidai or the bubble economy, babburu keiki. So basically, the very short explanation is this was a period of time in the late 80s to early 90s that the economy in Japan was booming. Like people were just like able to get money from the banks, and it was like credit was going crazy. People were borrowing, people were speculating on real estate. Real estate prices were just booming and going absolutely crazy. I think I saw one description that there was something that someone said, and I don't know if this is accurate, but this is just as an example to show how crazy things were getting. The entire price of the real estate available in the 23 wards of Tokyo was said to be of the same value of all of the land in the United States.
I believe it. Living in Tokyo, I don't know if that's changed. It's still there's some crazy
as it is
prices
now,
here.
Tokyo, of course, real estate ridiculously expensive. But the thing that was going on back then was like speculation was driving the prices like absolutely crazy, right? So what happens, this is a bubble. Eventually, all the free money that was going along and people were just spending money freely and all this stuff came to an end. And that was around 1991. I mean, the exact date, like whether you're looking at things from an economic perspective or a more kind of like cultural, societal perspective, the dates might vary a little bit. But generally speaking, 1991 is about the time when people say that the bubble era ends. The thing is, though, that, just because the economy kind of stopped, that doesn't mean that some of the trends and words and fashion things like died immediately at that point. Things take a little while to transition. So when we're talking about, in a looser sense, the bubble era, we're talking about usually like the second half of the 80s into the early 90s. So it's a very interesting time period because, like I said, money was going all over the place. Another example that you often hear is taxis. Like in order to stop a taxi, you had to wave a wad of cash in order to get them to stop because they were so busy, shuffling people around. They always had customers, so you had to really entice them in order to get them to stop. Bonuses were being paid once every 2 months, according to some people in some companies. If you were a new employee at a company, you were being wined and dined. If you were dating someone, they would buy you an apartment just as a present, right? Like these are the kind of crazy stories that you hear from back then. I can't vouch for them, but this is just to illustrate, the kinds of things that people still say about that time period, how much money was being thrown around.
Everybody was a billionaire, just everyone.
Yeah, or like they had massive loans, and then when they realized that they couldn't pay it back, and then the banks like shut down and whatever, like it all came crashing to a halt because
and it still hasn't recovered today.
Yeah, basically, yeah. They called it like the lost decade, and then some people say the lost 20 years, which are like the next 20 years after the early 90s. So Japan is in a way still recovering from that massive crash. But we are not an economics podcast. We're not. Kyle is the guest economist, but we can't focus on that too much. What we're really going to talk about is kind of the interesting trends and fashion and words that were going on at the time, because there was a lot of really interesting stuff that like if you were to start dressing like this or saying these words, immediately people would think like what's up with you, like why do you look like somebody from the 80s? But I love this kind of stuff, and I think Kyle enjoys it too, so
that's why my intro is just a jumble of nonsense, but you'll learn what it all means, so stick with us.
Exactly, yeah. So I wanted to talk about, let's start with some of like the general trends, like some of the fashion and things that were going on, and then we'll get into some of the terminology. But starting with like the fashion, so there's a lot that can be said, and we can't cover everything. But from what I've seen and from the research that I've done and from just my experience consuming Japanese media, I was not in Japan during the bubble era, unfortunately, but from what I've seen, a lot of the kind of stereotype of the bubble era fashion, in a way, is similar to like American 80s fashion, very bright, very gaudy, very over the top, colorful, right?
Shoulder pads. Don't forget the shoulder pads.
A lot of shoulder pads. Yeah. Definitely shoulder pads. Kind of bright lipstick and, very kind of gaudy makeup too. So I don't know if that was a direct influence or just a coincidence that both had similarities there. Probably influence, but I don't know. But something that last year in 2020, I happened to like the band Golden Bomber, and they released a music video for a song called Dance My Generation, which is totally inspired by 80s era fashion in Japan. And I love the song. I love the music video. But could you, how about we'll start with Kyle? Like, what are some of the things you noticed there?
I love the fashion, the neon suits with the big shoulder pads and the loose fit. It's kind of like reminds me a little bit of David Byrne from Talking Heads. He's famous for his big white suit, but more like bright. I don't know if neon's the right word. I'm not a
very
fashion
vibrant colored
guru,
suits.
but vibrant colors, yeah.
Yeah.
And that video utilizes a sort of a bloom effect where everything looks shiny and sparkly and bright. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like, I feel like the whole bubble era was just under that filter, even in real life, when walking around, everything was just glittery and shiny. And
that's where all the money went, is all the glitter for the country.
Somebody like just threw, the government invested heavily in glitter and they sprinkled it all over the street.
Yeah, they tried to wax the sidewalks too to make it all shiny. It was really costly.
It would just rain down from the two metropolitan towers, in the Tokyo Metropolitan building.
Yeah, right by Shinjuku Station, Yeah. I mean, I love that video. One, because I love Golden Bomber. I love the catchy song, and it's so tongue-in-cheek, but also because it's such a perfect like distillation of the kind of popular conception of what the bubble era was, right? Like you're saying, a lot of it seems to have been about like kind of showing off the wealth and jewelry and flashy colors and those suits. To me, they reminded me a bit of like the Miami Vice kind of like aesthetic too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So again, I don't know if there was a direct influence there, but there's a little bit of overlap. So another thing that was going on during this time was that the disco, right? The clubs or the discotheque, right, was very popular. So a lot of these fashion, ideas and trends, are directly related to this. A lot of people were going, having a good night out, dancing in the club. And so you get those suits. You also get, women's fashion, for example, the bodycon, which is this very tight dress, kind of like a mini skirt. And this is a very popular outfit that you would see, women going to the club wearing. And a lot of times these would also be like very bright and colorful. And that, interestingly, comes from the term body conscious. So apparently this was inspired by a 1981 dress seen at the Milano Collection fashion show. And then they shortened body conscious into bodycon, and that's this style of dress. So there you go. That's a bodycon. And then the hairstyle that is most commonly associated with that is the wanren. So that comes from wanrengusu, which is one length, which is this kind of like style of hair where the bottom, I guess, is all cut in like at the same length. That's why it's literally one length. And it's this long, straight hair usually.
It's like a bowl cut, but instead of using a bowl, they used something much bigger.
Yeah.
Grasping for examples here. They used a tub. It's a tub cut.
Yeah. It's long, straight hair, but then they just chop it all off in one long, straight line, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like, kind of like the stereotypical image of a woman at clubs in Japan of the bubble era. And so this becomes kind of like a quintessential bubble era look. Another thing that I enjoyed finding out about was another hairstyle popular with women called the Tosaka Maigami. Ryan, could you describe what the Tosaka Maigami is?
I'm not sure the words to describe this. Well, okay, what we have written in the notes is the rooster's comb front hair, a female hairstyle where you split the bangs into two parts, kind of. The front part hangs down above that you curl up, and I can't talk.
You have the bangs going down, and then you also have part of the bangs going up. Because big hair is all the rage, right? But you also want some bangs, so you're getting the best of both worlds.
So
Exactly.
Bangs that just go all over the place in the front. Let's just say that.
Yes. So Tosaka means like a rooster's comb or crest. So that's why and Maigami is literally front hair, but that is the term for bangs.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get the best of both worlds. You get the puffy and you get the down of the bangs, right?
And you still see this sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. You still see some, usually, somewhat older women kind of looking a little bit, as they call it in Japanese, bubbly. Bubbly,
which doesn't mean the English bubbly.
Yeah,
like
the English bubbly is totally different. Yeah. Bubbly means you look like you're still in the 80s.
You could be both. And some of my favorite people probably are both.
Yeah. No, a bubbly person would probably be very fun. So yeah, you still sometimes see it. I found this article. Well, I think it was like a kind of like a reader submission asking for advice, where it was a woman in her 30s asking for advice on how to talk to her older boss in her 40s. And this was from like the mid 2010s. And she was saying like, my boss is actually like, physically, she's actually quite, fit, and she's physically looks better than I do, but she dresses and looks like she's still in the bubble era. And she doesn't want to change, but yet she says that she wants a boyfriend. How can I give her advice on how to change her look?
Nah, just look for a bubble man.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Find a better man.
Yeah, find the guy that looks bubbly, right?
Yeah.
Change nothing.
Change nothing. You're not the problem. Definitely.
Forever bubbly.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And so about the Tosaka Maigami, this look seems to have been more popular with like kind of the cuter, maybe like idols of the time. So of course, each hairstyle kind of has a certain clique. I mean, just like now, right? Certain hairstyles get associated with a certain type of group. And like I said, the wanren seems to have been more on the like nightclub kind of thing. And the Tosaka Maigami was a bit more on the idol, cute kind of look. But there definitely must have been some overlap there as well.
Yeah, this one I've definitely seen more just in like pictures of old pop culture things from the 80s with idols.
Yeah, very popular. Yeah. If you look at those old photos, you'll see all this stuff. So yeah, even like I didn't know that it was called the Tosaka Maigami until I looked into this.
Everything has a name.
Yeah, everything has a crazy name. One thing that I thought when I was researching this, it kind of reminds me of a female version of a pompadour.
That word came to mind too, and I didn't want to say it, but yeah.
Yeah. Which I absolutely love pompadours on guys. Like it's just, I love that hairstyle.
It doesn't actually look like a pompadour, but if you had to say a female one, then yeah, this is what you would get.
It's like a pompadour that somebody spilled water on or something. I don't know. It's a pompadour that broke.
It's not pompadour. As dense.
Yeah. One last thing about this kind of like fashion-y stuff. So like I said, this was a time for the disco, right? So the biggest disco at the end of the bubble era opened in 1991. It was called Juliana's Tokyo in English. In Japanese, you would often just hear it referred to as Juliana Tokyo. And this was in Tokyo, obviously. And this place was like super popular, it seems. This was where all the cool people were going. This place helped popularize hardcore techno of the early 90s. So if you're familiar with early 90s hardcore techno from Japan, you've probably heard some of the songs that were playing there. There's this one guy, there's this British DJ named John Robinson, and I know him best for like using, he would always scream like Tokyo in his songs. I will include videos and links to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, including this song. Juliana Tokyo, they put out a whole bunch of music albums. Apparently they were making more money from the albums than the actual club. But in 1994, if I remember correctly, they ended up closing. But that whole movement, was really influential and is still, a lot of people still remember it today. And I think that ended up kind of bleeding into other movements in the 90s, such as, Gyaru and maybe even some of the like Eurobeat stuff that became popular later in the 90s. I'm sure there's a little bit of overlap there. But yeah, Juliana Tokyo, that's where you would go if you were super cool in the early 90s.
For 3 years, it's just amazing that something could become such a sensation and then completely just disappear within such a short amount of time.
I know, yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of the bleed through that I was mentioning, because, it starts right at like probably months before officially the bubble economy like crashes, but that kept going for like 3 years or so. And even like I was looking up videos, like revivals, people getting together and, like old people that used to go there, in the mid 2000s, they come together again and they're performing. There's this one like dance that the women would do. They would have these kind of like feather, like sensu, like these fans, and they would like, use that to dance. And so people still remember this, like this had a major cultural impact, but like you said, only 3 years. So I don't know, it must've been like pretty crazy for those 3 years. Like it kind of reminds you of like Studio 54 or something like that. Like, I don't think that place was there that long either, but it had definitely a cultural impact.
Hopefully, eventually, the movement will have a permanent fixture in Yoyogi Park, like those greaser guys.
Oh, yeah.
Are they still there?
Oh, they're still there. I just saw them a couple weeks ago. They're still doing their thing. So I'm hoping that this Juliana's Tokyo movement gets big enough for there to be a kind of permanent cosplay scene somewhere out in the real world.
I hope it comes back.
Because I want to join it. I'm there.
You've already got the slang down. That's like half the battle.
You got the slang down. Exactly, yeah. One last thing before we get into the slang. This isn't a fashion thing so much as just a general interesting trend that I found. But car stuff, of course, expensive cars, all that stuff, that was popular too. But one thing that I found was that, of course, the car phone was a big deal, right? Back in those days, cell phones weren't, there yet. Maybe in the early 90s, you started to get cell phones. But, before then, you had car phones, which were these like brick phones installed inside your car. And because you had a car phone, if you had a car phone rather, you would have an antenna in your car. But car phones were super expensive, so not everybody could afford a car phone. But what many people could afford were fake car phone antennas.
Smart.
Yep. So if you want to look like you have a car phone, but you can't afford the car phone, you just install a fake antenna there. And now all your friends go like, oh, you have a car phone. Woo.
All the status for a fraction of the cost. And you don't even have to talk to anybody.
I gotta be honest, I want one of these now. I want to be driving around in 2021 with my fake car phone antenna.
I was watching a video about these car trends in the bubble era, and it mentioned how at one point there were even like fake car phone antennas that had like the stickers or emblems of NTT on them, just for extra legitimacy.
I think it would be great to have it now, because like anyone 20 or younger will have no clue what this weird stick is, and then anyone in their 50s is like, your car doesn't look old enough to have that. What's up?
Put an 80s style NTT antenna on your like Tesla Model 3 or whatever.
Yeah, but like on my car now. Like my car's not brand new, but it's probably like 2015-ish. Just like stick it on
you
there.
have a car.
Well,
yeah, because he lives in the rural.
Flex.
Yeah, you gotta drive here. Our train leaves once an hour and doesn't go anywhere in the city. It just goes to other cities.
Well, Ryan, I have one more fake antenna that you could potentially install in your car. Another thing that apparently happened, and I don't know how widespread this was, but this was mentioned in the video, was that, you know, especially like limousines and certain kinds of cars would have like TVs in them, right? And so you needed a TV antenna, which for the limousines were these kind of like boomerang looking like, you know, curved antennas. And so some cars would have fake boomerang TV antennas on them as well. So you could have both, Ryan.
Yeah, I gotta go both.
Yeah. So there you go.
It's even better because TV doesn't work like with the antenna anymore because they updated it whenever that was.
Yeah, or you could run a cable into your car and just drive around with
just have a cable trailing out my car back to my house.
That's my TV car cable.
For the TV, my car doesn't even have.
They don't know that, though.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't spoil the illusion.
I just looked up the boomerang antenna. It looks cool. It looks kind of 50s-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like almost like a spoiler.
You can put it on the front hood.
Like one of those like truck emblems on the front.
Yeah, kinda. Oh, and I'm gonna get it in the wrong color too. My car's silver. I'm gonna get like green or something.
Have you guys ever talked about Decotora on this podcast?
No, we haven't, but it's definitely a good topic. Those super flashy decorated trucks, right?
Yeah, you can just be one of those, but just for your car, Ryan.
Yeah.
I want it to look gaudy and ugly.
Yep.
I support this.
Yeah, and you'll get your colorful suit and your Tosaka Maigami, your rooster hair.
Yes.
Start a GoFundMe. I'll send you some money.
The car will have the Tosaka Maigami. I'm going to get a giant wig and like put it over the like the cab you sit in.
I like this. All right. We're taking notes here. All right. Let's take a quick break and we'll be back with some of those slang terms that we were talking about. Hey, so just a couple quick things before we get back into the show. First of all, don't forget to subscribe to the show. That will ensure that you don't miss any future episodes. I normally drop episodes on the 7th and the 21st of the month, but if you're subscribed, then you won't have to remember that. They'll just appear magically in your podcast app. So also, don't forget to rate and review the show. That certainly does help the show keep on growing. And if you leave us a nice or funny review, we may even read it on the show. In fact, I would love to keep doing that. We did that a few episodes ago with a very nice review that we got. So definitely consider doing that. And if there's anything that you'd love us to look into, if you have a question about Japan, if there's anything about Japan or the Japanese language that has you confused, we'd certainly love to hear from you. You can email us at ichimon@japankyo.com. Again, ichimon@japankyo.com. And don't forget to check out the latest episodes of Japan Station, my other podcast about Japan, episode 61 and 62. So 61 is a solo episode where I answer the question, how did you become so familiar with Japan? And 62 is an episode where I interview Drew Richard, a journalist and writer. His work has appeared in the Japan Times and the New York Times and Metropolis Japan and a bunch of other places. He's a really interesting guy who's covered a lot of very unique things in Japan. He's had many unique experiences, and he writes about it in his new book called Every Human Intention, Japan in the New Century. You can use the Japankyo Amazon affiliate link to go get it, japankyo.com/Amazon. Anyway, if you want to find out more about that, go check out Japan Station. You can find it at japanstationpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So I think enough shilling there. Let's get back into the bubble stuff. Okay, so let's get into these slang terms. I mean, this was, I think, the part that I was most excited about. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love crazy hair and all that stuff, but I particularly love talking about outdated language,
yes.
As does Kyle, right?
I love it.
All right, Kyle, why don't you introduce us with our first one, because you used it right at the beginning, so now we can explain what exactly that is.
Yes, asashan. Asa, the kanji for morning, and then shan in katakana for shampoo. Yep. So it means doing shampoo in the morning. Usually, traditionally, I guess, in Japan, normally you will take a full-on shower bath at night. And that's kind of the regular bathing time pre-bubble era. And then I guess what asashan means is these, to keep their amazing hairstyles going, that we just talked about, the getting best of both worlds bangs, you really needed a fresh shampoo to make that work.
Best of both worlds.
So people
bangs.
started doing shampooing in the morning.
Yep.
And even if it meant skipping breakfast, even if it meant you didn't get your morning coffee, even if it meant you didn't get to kiss your mom goodbye on the way to school, you're going to do your morning shampoo and get your look right. And I support that. So that's asashan.
Exactly. Yeah. Asashan. I love this word. Something that we're going to notice in these in a lot of these terms, or in some of the ones that we already talked about, like bodycon and wanren. Japanese has this tendency to shorten things into 4 mora, right? So if you write it in hiragana, it would be 4 letters. So in this case, we're talking about asashan, right? In bodycon, it's bodycon. In wanren, it's wanren, right? It's a lot of times, not 100% of the time, but I'd venture to say 90% of the time, they shorten things into 4 da, right?
Dorakue.
Dorakue, yes, Dragon Quest, exactly.
The first one I learned.
Yeah. So when in doubt, it's 4 letters.
Sumabura.
What?
Sumabura. Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers. Shua-chan. Schwarzenegger, Shua-chan.
Or Purikura, right? The
there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, asashan. So this apparently, like Kyle mentioned, there was some survey that said high school girls, like a vast number of them were choosing to, wash their hair, even if it meant having to skip breakfast in order to do that. So in 1985, Toto, the toilet company, I mean, they're most famous for toilet stuff, but they do general bathroom and kitchenware and all that kind of stuff. Not kitchenware, what do they call it? Like sinks and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But they released what was it called? Shampoo Doressa, which was basically like this sink with this removable nozzle, shower head on it, right? And it was so that you could wash your hair without having to get into the bathtub and or take a proper shower. You could still bathe the night before, but only wash your hair in the morning.
And apparently it was so popular, the next year they made a bigger one.
Yeah, exactly. Then they made a bigger one, and this thing just blew up. It was a craze. This ended up sparking 2-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, shampoos, and products related to special super absorbent towels. Mitsubishi eventually released a portable asashan, they called it the Asashan Club, and there's a commercial. I will include the commercial in the show notes, but basically it's I think it's like a portable shower head, so you can connect it to any sink. You don't have to have this special sink. And then one of the promotional materials, I think it was Toto that did this, they were trying to appeal to dads, because dads were the guys working, earning the money. So they're the ones that approve any kind of remodeling in the house, right? And so the pitch that they gave these dads, right, in this marketing material was, get one of these so that your daughter doesn't have to get naked in the cold winter in order to shampoo her hair. Aww. So she can just wash her hair without having to, get into the shower. So this thing it seems like it was really just an absolute craze. And a lot of young women were shampooing their hair in the morning. That's what the in thing was to do.
Well, coming from the Midwest in the United States, where the winters get really cold, we always had central air and central heating. And that kind of makes sense. In Tokyo,
it's a good point. Yeah.
You don't usually have central air, central heating. You just have the air conditioning units. And so now showers have dedicated heating units. When it's too cold, you can actually heat the shower. But that's probably a pretty, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that's a fairly recent thing and still kind of a luxury. And so it kind of makes sense that you don't want to go in the cold shower room.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty strong selling point, I think.
Yeah. And like you were saying, I mean, it's customary to take a shower in the evening. So rather than changing that custom and having to take a whole shower or bath in the morning, you still do it, but then you wash your hair in the morning. So trying to kind of, I guess, make it efficient rather than doing it twice.
Yeah.
So yeah, asashan, I mean, I happen to shower in the morning. So I guess every morning I'm asashampooing.
Asashaning.
I like
Yeah,
how instead
asashan.
of just like changing the tradition to bathe in the morning, it became make a new thing to just partially bathe in the morning.
Yeah. And I don't know if guys were doing this because all the marketing material was women. So probably guys weren't, but
The guys
who
with
knows?
pompadours
Maybe the
probably
guys.
were.
Yeah. Maybe like the pompadour guys were. I don't know.
But looking at the design that you shared, I don't know if that will be in the show notes, but you can look up
can link to
the
it.
shampoo Doresa.
Yeah.
I feel like that still is still influencing kind of the design of a lot of bathrooms
Yeah.
in Japan. If you're lucky enough, your sink might be separate from your actual shower and toilet, but some smaller apartments, everything's in one room. So like your shower is where your sink is. And in those cases, I feel like this design is still pretty common for the sink console.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, like, I mean, yes, it was a while ago, but in terms of like remodeling your house, right? Like maybe some people installed these around 1990, and that's 30 years. I mean, sinks certainly last for 30 years. So, you know, some people probably still have these in their house and they haven't changed them and they're just there. So I wouldn't be surprised to still see them, you know, fairly commonly if you go to a house, especially rather than a newer apartment. So yeah, that is asashan. All right. So Ryan, why don't you introduce the next one?
The next one is itameshi.
Itameshi. Yes. Itameshi. Another four
Yeah,
Mora
itameshi.
letter. Itameshi. Exactly.
Which comes from Italia meshi.
Yep.
Which basically just means Italian food.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Now, again, these are all like bubble era terms. So people don't normally say this unless they're being kind of cheeky or, you know, facetious. But itameshi, Italian food was very popular in the bubble era. And also, I found out that tiramisu was also quite popular. Also, nata de coco. I don't know if all our listeners will know what that is, but you still see it in Japan. A lot of times like in yogurt and stuff. But yeah, anyway, so there were a lot of popular foods. Italian food was very popular. A lot of Italian restaurants started opening at the time. This was for various reasons. One was that a lot of Japanese chefs had gone to train in Italy and then they come back. And then in the latter half of the 80s, they started opening their own places. Also, I read that in the first part of the 80s, French food was very popular, but that was very expensive. And so then Italian food became kind of like a more accessible, more casual kind of thing. And then another thing that is related to this is that before this boom in Italian food, it was pretty common to just refer to pasta in general. So whether it was fettuccine or whatever, as spaghetti in Japanese, everything was spaghetti. And then once the Italian food really took off, then you started to get the distinction, you know, pasta and spaghetti. But some older people may still call like just any pasta like spaghetti or, you know, or like, maybe on like an old kisaten, like an old kind of cafe, you might still see spaghetti, just even though it's not technically the right noodle, you know. So there's still a little bit of that ambiguity in Japanese, I think. But yeah, this became so popular, and so then this term just really took off. Itameshi. So and meshi is not something you would normally attach to foreign cuisine. I mean, you get, for example, like yaki meshi, which is fried rice. You get other types of meshi, but usually with Western cuisine, you don't see that. You don't see, for example, like Meki meshi, like Mexican food.
I want some, though.
Yeah, Mexican food hasn't quite had its moment yet, as far
I don't
as I
think
can
so.
tell.
It's been at a constant simmer, but it hasn't quite exploded in Japan.
Simmer.
Yeah.
I guess Italian food, the leap is a little easier because there's the shared noodle kind of entry point. Everybody understands a noodle, but
True.
like what's a taco? What's chips and salsa? Like dipping is kind of a new concept, I guess, still.
Yeah, that is a different style, totally. And it's like totally different shapes and things. Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, I think whenever you can find it, they're too stingy. Like, nachos aren't free, and when you order them, you get so few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You get, like, literally,
it's tough.
I think one place gave me 8 for, like, 500 yen.
And when you find a place that's good, they know what they have, and it's like 1,200 yen for a taco.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it's just like, that's too much. too
one
much.
thing I was reading was that when I didn't verify this, but it seems it's quite believable that when pasta first started entering, I guess in a significant way, or I'm not sure, but around the end of the Edo period, pasta ended up in Japan, and so one way they were describing it was they were saying it was like udon, basically, because both are like wheat noodles, right? So that's the point of reference, udon. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Kyle. Yeah, there's kind of like it's easier to understand, like noodles, you eat the noodles, it all makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So ita meshi, if you want to, be kind of cheeky and say next time, let's go have some ita meshi, you can do that. And your friends, if your friends are like under 20, they may not even know this word. I would not be surprised if they don't know, they've never heard it.
And of course, we all know the best itameshi is Caesarea, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's where all the cool kids go.
Yep. It's cheap.
Hey, yeah, no shade. I've been there many times, and I will definitely go again.
I have to. Yes. I will add though that there's some very good, like pricey, but some very good Italian restaurants. I've been to in Osaka and Kyoto. I'm sure there's plenty in Tokyo as well. So there's some very, very good places.
Yeah, I think actually the best Italian restaurant I've ever been to was in Tokyo. So
yeah,
it's called Pizzara.
Pizzara? That's
Pizzara.
that's like the Domino's
end.
Japanese Domino's.
That's the good stuff.
I went to a really, really good pizza place, like Italian style pizza in Tokyo as well. So you can find some great stuff.
Hey, Saizeri's got a drink bar.
Yes, they do. Yeah. And
if that's not fancy, I don't know what is.
Exactly. Yeah, you can fill up on that.
Melon soda?
Yeah, melon
on
soda.
that coup.
Oh, right, coup. I like coup.
Coup. Anyway. All right, Kyle, what's the next one?
The next one is obatarian.
Obatarian. All right. So this one, you know what? The first time that I came across this word was in a Japanese textbook that I had when I first started learning Japanese. And when I brought it up when somebody brought it up in class, my teacher laughed because of this and like, oh, this is an old word. You don't need to learn this.
I feel like tarian there was a bit of a boom because there's also jibe tarian, which means the ruffians, Yankee types who hang out in front of konbinis on the ground and like drink and smoke and cause a ruckus. They're called jibetarians.
Interesting. I didn't know that one. Huh.
I guess it comes from vegetarian, and then they just decided tarian is the thing you put at the end of another thing. That means they like that.
Well, all right. So that could be in that case, but in the case of obatarian, there's a very interesting story to this.
Oh.
To this word. So
I'm
first
excited.
of all, let me explain what it means. So obatarian it basically means like a pushy, older or middle-aged, like usually anywhere from like 30s to 70s or roughly, aged woman, that is kind of pushy, maybe quick to anger, maybe a little bit nosy, or like likes to gossip a lot.
So just Osaka no Obasan?
Yeah, kind of like the stereotype of what an Osaka older woman is like.
And kind of a Karen, I guess, to give it some Western influence.
A little bit.
Karatarian.
Although the difference is though, like nowadays, right? Karen is still I think it died off a little bit, but it's still being used. It's usually like an insult, but obatarian seems to also have taken on kind of like a caring, kind of like affectionate, almost like a nice side to it. It wasn't simply an insult.
It's just like a tough lady.
Could be. Yeah. Because, for example, one politician, like I said, this thing like totally blew up. Like it got nominated for one of those like trendy words of the years. I think it got an award. I don't remember which one it was, but that's the level that it got to. And there was one politician, a female politician, that was saying like obatarian power, right? So it was kind of like
reclaiming
empowering
it
almost.
Nice.
So it had this kind of nicer aspect to it as well, but I'm sure people could use it in the more insulting sort of way. But so obatarian comes from a manga. I think it was 1987, if I remember correctly. And the manga was called Obatarian. And it was written by this guy named Hota Katsuhiko, I believe. And it was a story about some woman that fits this description. It was kind of like a comedic manga. And apparently it really blew up. It took off. And so this word became popular. Now, the word, he created this word from two words, from obasan, which can mean aunt, as in, uncle and aunt, or it can mean this kind of general middle-aged woman. And this is really interesting, but Batarian, which was a 1986 movie, if I remember correctly, but in the US, I think it came out in 85. In the US, the title was The Return of the Living Dead, but in Japanese, it was Battalion, which in katakana is Batarian.
Oh.
And so he combined Obasan and Batarian to create Obatarian.
So it's a zombie woman.
And zombie. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I wonder if that's where the Jibe-tarian came from, Obatarian.
Could be.
I always thought it was like from vegetarian, but that makes some sense.
It very well could be. But I don't know about that one. I didn't research it. So
a battalion of drunk street urchins makes a lot more sense than vegetarian street urchins.
Vegetarian street urchins.
Vegetarian street urchins. It's like, give us your food, but make sure it's vegetables.
They're invading the cities, the vegetarians.
We don't want your burgers. We just want
especially
lettuce.
with like the zombie nuance on this too. I like this story.
Yeah. So, and I watched the Japanese trailer for the Return of the Living Dead, Batarian, and it has this. Of course, they read a Japanese guy with a deep voice reads the title, and I will insert that here. But it's basically like Batarian. You know,
and he's still the voice today.
So yeah, this word like totally blew up. Nowadays you don't hear it; it's an old-fashioned word. But for me, I started learning Japanese. I don't know, in the late '90s or around then. So I used some textbooks that still had some leftovers from that time period. So I guess that's how Obatarian made it into that textbook that I was using very, very, very early on when I was first starting out.
What did your textbook say it meant? I'm just curious. Did it have a long description or just give you like a one-word translation?
I don't remember exactly what it said, but I do remember that it had something to do with like an older woman or something like that. Probably like pushy older woman or something. But like I said, our teacher said, don't worry about that. All right. So that is Obatarian. So Ryan, what's the next one?
The next one is Shoyu Gao.
Oh man, this one's another interesting one.
Pretty directly soy sauce face.
Yep. So
it's obvious everyone can understand what that means just by the name.
Yep, soy sauce face. So with Kyle, we talked about vegetable insult in episode 14, I think. So, now we're going to talk about condiment insults not insults, compliments, really. So soy sauce face is a compliment. So if somebody says you're a soy sauce face, I guess you should be happy. But shoyu gao, literally soy sauce face. So apparently this aesthetic really became popular in the late 80s. And what it is kind of like it's for men. Okay, we're talking about men in this case. A very classical Japanese kind of face or Asian kind of facial structure. So maybe a little bit flatter face, certain features that would be considered more typically Japanese, as opposed to, and this is another term that exists, sosu gao, which is sauce face. And in Japanese, when you're talking about sosu, not always, but a lot of times you're talking about Worcestershire sauce. Is that how you pronounce it?
Sure.
It's as good as I can do.
I understood it.
Worcestershire or Worcestershire, because usually the sauce that you're talking about is, for example, the sauce that you dip when you're eating like tonkatsu, right? That's sosu. But it's used in various places, okonomiyaki. And so usually that's called sosu. So you could call it a sauce face or a Worcestershire sauce face. I'm not sure. But that describes a more typical like Western featured face. So like deeper like eye holes. What are those called?
Eye holes sounds good.
What are eye holes called? Like, the
sockets.
Sockets. Thank you. Oh man.
Nah,
yes,
eye
that's
holes.
the word
Either one sounds strange, so you can pick whichever one.
Like the typical Western face is kind of like, the cheekbones are higher, right? You have the deeper eye sockets. So it's that kind of facial structure.
The meme of handsome Squidward. Look it up. Put it in the show notes. Handsome Squidward.
I will.
I'll look it up here in the audio.
So typically, according to what I read, the sauce face was more popular up until around the bubble era, and then that's when soy sauce face became more popular. And then in the around 2013, we also got salt face, shiogao. And so salt face is apparently like more delicate features. I'm assuming it's a more kind of like pretty boy, kind of beautiful boy aesthetic.
I like how you say we got, like there's a team of people developing these things and they finally reached
And next
the
is
apex that is
paprika
salt face. I wonder what is next.
After years of research, the team at Mitsubishi Electric was finally able to reach the pinnacle of male handsomeness, salt face. Yes. So just to give some examples of what a typical soy sauce face would be someone like Fukuyama Masaharu, a very, very handsome Japanese singer, or Ichiro, as in Ichiro Suzuki, or Ono Satoshi, who is from Arashi, another idol guy, Odagiri Joe, an actor and movie director. So like I said, more typical Japanese classical handsome good looks. And so this is still considered, even though like the term was popular in the bubble era, you still hear this, and it's still considered, a good looking guy. So there you go.
It's all about those shallow sockets.
I guess so. Yeah. More kind of subtle, less in your face kind of features. Like the soy sauce face is more like, deeper, more pronounced features, more, stronger characteristics, I guess you could say. So yeah, soy sauce face. Kyle, would you mind doing the last one for us?
Sure. Dorai Senso, Dry War. So this is related to beer in Japan. Is often called dry. There's Asahi Super Dry.
Yep.
And Kirin also entered the fold, I think, with a dry beer.
Yep.
And for advertising, they brought in some Western celebrities.
Yes.
Everybody trying to push their version of dry beer.
Yep. Yeah. So I think it was Kirin that brought on Gene Hackman to do a commercial. And then I think it was Suntory that ended up bringing on Mike Tyson to do a commercial. So, the marketing for dry beer was just crazy in the 80s. So Asahi was the first one to the market in 87, and they were expecting to sell 1 million cases, but they ended up selling like 13.5 million cases in a year.
Nice.
Yeah. And that is, and I have to say it this way because as I know the commercial for Asahi Super Dry in more recent years, I don't know if they're still doing this, but they always use this guy that says is Asahi Super Dry, right? He really...
I've heard that voice.
Yeah, love those commercials. I don't even drink beer, but I love the Super Dry.
Is there a term for that accent, like the very punchy, Americanized Japanese pronunciation?
There might be among voice actors in Japan, but I don't know what it is.
Because the announcer at Yakult Swallows games, he's Japanese. He'll jump between speaking native Japanese and then that punchy English eyes Japanese. So it's very much like a style, a chosen style within Japanese voice acting and announcing and stuff.
In a lot of radio in Japan, you get, for example, Ohayou gozaimasu minasan, and then when they switch to commercials, it sounds like a super exaggerated, like American radio station. They go, Tokyo FM. Yeah, I love that stuff. So it's always just the massive shift is what gets me. I always love that. But anyway, so this dry beer, which... Kyle, can you explain what dry beer is? Because like I said, I don't drink alcohol. I'm very aware of this being popular, but I don't know exactly what the difference is with the dry beer. Do you know?
Dry beer means that it's crisp. It doesn't have as much of a lingering after flavor. Like a malty beer, it kind of sticks to your palate a bit. Whereas a dry beer, it's more a bit almost tart. I would say it's sharp and upfront and doesn't linger super long. So it's a more refreshing kind of crisp thing that you might drink in the summer or something when you don't want like a malty, heavier beer sticking to your palate and kind of weighing you down.
That was a perfect explanation because it sounded exactly like the Japanese that I was reading. But since I don't really understand all the terminology in Japanese, I was not quite clear on all the nuance, but I think you cleared it up for me.
Yeah, I also don't drink alcohol. So I was assuming you crack it open, there's just powder inside.
Dehydrated
You have to add
beer.
water.
Yeah, it's dry. You got to add your own water.
It's super dry. It's not just dry, it's super dry. But yeah, they were describing it with like nigami, which can be translated as bitterness, or like kire. Kire, I guess, like you said, it doesn't have that lingering after taste. So that's
It's kind of like
spot on.
lemon juice versus apple juice, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Apple juice is more soft and kind of lingering, and lemon is fresh and in your face and tart. It's kind of like that, I guess, to use a non-alcoholic comparison.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. Now I better understand the Japanese terminology that I always hear in commercials and stuff. So, but yeah, so all the companies, Sapporo, Kirin, Suntory, they all started trying to get in on the action and bringing on the celebrities to do, advertising for them. And it really blew up, and it seems to have stuck around because Asahi Super Dry and all these dry beers are still around. Not as popular as they once were. There's been other trends and whatnot, but they've become just a fixture. And then going back to the term, dorai means dry, right? Senso is war. I think, I didn't read this anywhere, but I think this was probably maybe a play off the Cold War, which in Japanese usually you hear as reisen, which is like Cold War. I mean, it's sen comes from senso. So maybe it's a play off of that. I don't know, but
No, it was an
certainly seems
actual
like
war.
it's-
Like the beer companies fought with each other in the streets, and thousands died.
Yeah. They were carried on the backs of their squires and complained when their squires were too wobbly.
Refer
pouring
back to our
beer on
Japanese
each other.
mistakes episode.
Yeah,
Part
listen to
two.
the previous episode or whenever
Yeah.
that aired.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, I think what was going on was there was like foam in the streets that was, complemented by the glitter that was already in the streets, right?
Right.
So,
Yes.
To wash the glitter away,
So-
they just shot like beer cannons everywhere.
Yeah, the moment the bubble was over, it was like what's the ceremony in the military when you're shooting into the
21
air?
gun
It was
salute.
like that, but with beer cans.
21,
20
21 good salute. Yeah.
The 21
And
can
then the
salute.
street urchin vegetarians came, and it was a new era.
What else can we throw in here? Everything we've said in the last hour.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
And
they
then
all had
afterwards, they all had
pompadours.
to. Yeah, the next morning, they washed their hair with shampoo. So, yeah. With
Perfect.
portable shampoo washing stations.
that also shot out beer.
Yeah. So the end of Japan's bubble era basically was it smelled like beer. There was no shampoo left,
But it was very
And-
sparkly and fabulous.
but the glitter was still around. Yeah. So people that ended up becoming something that people resented because it reminded them of the wealth that had just been washed away by all the beers.
Yeah. Glitter, leftover glitter is it's a different feeling than fresh glitter.
Yeah, fresh glitter is
Yeah.
where
And it's so hard to like wash away too, right? Just
Yeah.
sticks there. So
It doesn't just go away. So it lingered and brought back sometimes bittersweet memories as people were washing glitter and beer out of their hair for the following years.
the following decade. It was a lot
Following
of glitter,
decade.
guys. You can't underestimate it.
Yep. Yeah. So that was all the stuff that I wanted to cover. But Kyle, do you want to bring up anything else?
I'll just do a quick rundown of the things I mentioned at the beginning in case anybody's wondering what they all meant. So
Yes.
Shimo Shimo is a play on Moshi Moshi,
Yeah.
where it's kind of the same word, but you mix up the order. So you switch the mo and the shi, and it becomes Shimo Shimo. We talked plenty about asashan and obatarian. The two that I really like are cho beriba and cho berigu, which
Yes.
means cho is Japanese very or extra or especially, and very is the English very, and then ba and gu is bad and good. So it's just a very extra way to say very good or very bad.
Yes.
Cho beriba, cho berigu.
Yeah. I've heard
I
that
think
one.
those are all the ones. Oh, and Naui.
Yeah, Naui.
Naui means of the time, of the moment, but it now is very not Naui because it's very much representative of the bubble era. But I like that word.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's plenty other. There's a lot of other terms, of course. This was a significant. I don't know, like culturally influential portion of Japan's recent history. So there's definitely a lot that came out of that. But that's all that we'll cover for now. Unless Ryan, you want to mention anything else?
Yeah, I'm good. I think we've covered it all.
All right. Kyle, is there anything that you would want to do if you suddenly woke up the next morning, and you found yourself in bubble era Japan?
I'm going to go to Juliana's. I'm going to be feeling that bodycon realness. I'm going to put on one of those. And it's just going to be all about glitter and feeling my bodycon fantasy.
Bodycon
Definitely.
fantasy?
Yeah, it's going to be bodycon down, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan's got the bubble car, and Kyle's got the bodycon.
And what were the bangs? Definitely going to have those
Maigami?
bangs. Yes.
Yeah, Tosaka Maigami.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go for the suit. I got to have one of those flashy, colorful suits.
I want at least like 8-inch shoulder pads.
Yeah. You got to have the shoulder
Got to be
pads.
at least the top of my head.
And of course, Ryan's driving
Yeah,
wherever
yeah.
we're going.
Yep.
Blasting
Exactly.
80s techno all the way.
Yeah.
This sounds like an amazing time.
Yep. The bubble era was fun, man. It was fun. What came after, maybe not so fun, but at that time, it seems like people were having a good old time. So
It kind of reminds me a little bit now of the crypto craze going on. Like there are people who have Tesla made more money buying Bitcoin than selling cars. So I feel like if you want to live up that bubble time, it may not be too late. Start buying some of those cryptos and see what happens.
yeah. We are not financial advisors.
No, I like the coin.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, you hear the Lambo, right? You got to get the Lambo.
Oh, do you guys hear that ping pong happening?
Oh, is that someone who got mentioned in the other podcast episode?
That's my heart out. That's my pal Cal showing up.
All
So
right.
that means I got to run soon.
All right. So let's wrap it up, but definitely go check out Tokyo Explosion so you can hear the episode that they're about to record that might come out even before this one. We'll see. But either way, check out Tokyo Explosion. Link in the show notes. Thank you so much, Kyle, for coming back.
It's always a pleasure. Tony and Ryan, you guys do a tremendous job. I love that you guys do research so that I don't have to. In my podcast, usually I'm the one trying to pull things together. So it's just nice to show up and read your notes and make it sound like I know stuff.
Yeah. No, we it takes time, but I like doing it, and I like having you on to joke around, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. So, as always, thank you guys. Thank you, Ryan, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.